A friend of mine recently moved to the United States and got a job at a preschool. Over the past few months, she's been telling me small, strange stories about things that have been happening there. Things she can't really explain. And honestly, I couldn't wait to share them with you. Welcome back to my channel. If you want your story to be featured here, send it to the email in the description below. Let's begin. My first week working at a preschool in a small town. When I moved to this town, I didn't really have a plan. I just knew I needed to leave where I was living before. Nothing dramatic, nothing you'd see in a movie. Just one of those situations where staying felt worse than starting over somewhere new. The town I moved to was small. The kind of place where there's only one grocery store, one gas station, and everyone seems to know each other. I didn't know anyone there, which was exactly why I picked it. A few days after I arrived, I found a job at a preschool on the edge of town. It wasn't a big building, just one long hallway with a few classrooms, a small office, and a playground behind the fence. The director told me they needed help because one of the teachers had quit recently. She didn't say why, and I didn't ask. I just needed the job. The first couple of days were normal. The kids were loud, messy, and full of energy like kids always are. Most of them were between 4 and 5 years old, so my job was mostly helping during lunch, watching them during playtime, and making sure nobody started crying for no reason. Nothing strange happened at first. If anything, the place felt a little too quiet sometimes, especially in the mornings before all the kids arrived. On my third day, I was helping in one of the classrooms during lunchtime. The kids were sitting at small tables, eating sandwiches and fruit, and I was walking around the room, making sure nobody spilled their drink. One of the boys sitting near the door kept looking out into the hallway instead of eating. At first, I thought he was just distracted. I told him, "Hey, focus on your food, okay?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the open doorway. I walked closer and asked him what he was looking at. He pointed toward the hallway and said quietly, "Why is that kid standing there?" I turned and looked outside. The hallway was empty. No teachers, no kids, nothing. I told him, "There's nobody there." He frowned a little, like he didn't understand what I meant. "He's right there," he said. "He's been there for a while." Something about the way he said it made me feel uncomfortable, but I didn't want to scare him, so I stepped out into the hallway to check. It was completely quiet. The lights above the hallway made that faint buzzing sound old fluorescent lights sometimes make, and the floor looked freshly cleaned like it always did after the morning shift. I walked a few steps left, then right. No one. When I came back into the classroom, the boy was still looking at the doorway. I asked him, "What does he look like?" He shrugged. "He just stands there." That was it. He went back to eating like nothing happened, and the other kids didn't seem to notice anything at all. I tried to forget about it. Kids imagine things all the time. That's what I told myself. But a few minutes later, when lunch was over, I walked to the door to close it before we went outside. And that's when I noticed the floor. Right in front of the classroom doorway, on the hallway tiles, there were small wet footprints. Not a lot, just a few. Like someone with small shoes had been standing there. I remember staring at them for a few seconds, trying to figure out where the water could have come from. It hadn't rained that day. None of the kids had been outside yet, and the janitor had finished cleaning the hallway earlier that morning. I looked around to see if anyone else noticed. No one did. I didn't say anything to the director. I didn't say anything to the other teachers. It felt like one of those things that sounds strange when you say it out loud, even if you know you saw it. Later that afternoon, while the kids were playing outside, I asked one of the older teachers how long she had worked there. She said almost 10 years. I joked and told her I was still getting used to the place, and that sometimes it felt a little off. She looked at me for a second, like she was deciding whether to say something. Then she just smiled and said, "You'll get used to it." I asked her if the teacher before me had worked there long. The smile on her face faded a little. "Not really," she said. That was all she told me. That night, When I went back to my apartment, I kept thinking about what the boy said. Not the footprints, not the hallway, just one sentence. He's been there for a while. I don't know why that bothered me so much. Maybe because I had only been working there for 3 days. And somehow, something I couldn't see was already standing outside my classroom. After my first week at the preschool, I started telling myself that the strange feeling I had there was just because everything was new. New town, new job, new people. When you don't know a place well, every little thing feels off, even when nothing is actually wrong. At least that's what I kept repeating to myself every morning before work. For the next few days, nothing unusual happened. The kids were loud like always. The teachers joked with each other in the break room, and the hallway smelled like cleaning spray and crayons the way it always did. If I hadn't seen those wet footprints the other day, I probably wouldn't have thought about it again. But on Friday, something happened that made that feeling come back. It was lunchtime again, and I was helping in the same classroom as before. The kids were sitting at the small tables, opening their lunchboxes, talking over each other the way they always did. One of the girls at the end of the table kept turning around in her chair, looking toward the door. At first, I ignored it. Kids get distracted every 5 seconds, so it wasn't anything new. After a minute, I walked over and said, "Hey, you need to face the table while you eat, okay?" She didn't answer. She just kept looking past me toward the hallway. I followed her eyes and looked at the open doorway. The hallway was empty, same as before. I turned back to her and asked, "What are you looking at?" She pointed toward the door without even looking at me. "That boy," she said. My stomach tightened a little when she said that. I tried to sound normal. "What boy?" "The one outside," she said quietly. "He's not allowed to come in." For a second, I didn't say anything. The room suddenly felt louder than before, like all the other kids were talking at once, but her voice was the only thing I could focus on. I walked to the doorway and looked out again. Nothing. Just the long hallway, the lights on the ceiling, the office door at the other end, and the sound of someone moving chairs in another classroom. No kid. No teacher. No one. I stepped into the hallway and looked both ways, just to be sure. Still nothing. When I came back inside, the girl was still watching the door. I asked her, "What does he look like?" She shrugged. "He just stands there." I felt a chill go through my arms when she said that, because those were almost the exact same words the boy used a few days ago. I didn't want to ask more questions in front of the other kids, so I just told her to finish eating. A few minutes later, lunch was over, and the kids started lining up to go outside. I stayed behind for a moment to clean the table. That's when I heard a sound in the hallway. A soft, wet sound, like someone stepping on a floor that hadn't dried yet. I froze for a second, then slowly walked to the door. The hallway looked empty again, but when I looked down at the floor right in front of the classroom, I saw it. Small, wet footprints, not leading past the door, not coming from the bathroom, just a few prints right in front of the doorway, like someone had been standing there without moving. The same spot as before. I stood there longer than I should have, just staring at them, trying to think of a normal explanation. Maybe one of the kids spilled water earlier. Maybe the janitor mopped the floor again. Maybe I was remembering the other day and imagining things. I told myself all of that. None of it made the feeling go away. Later that afternoon, while the kids were outside, I went into the teacher's break room to grab some coffee. One of the older teachers was there, the same one I talked to a few days ago. I didn't want to sound weird, but the question came out anyway. "Has anything strange ever happened here?" I asked. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, then said, "Like kids saying they see someone in the hallway when nobody's there." For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just held her coffee cup and looked at the table. Then she sighed a little and said, "You shouldn't pay too much attention to what the kids say." That answer didn't help. "If someone was standing in the hallway," I said, trying to laugh it off, "you'd know, right?" She nodded slowly. "Of course." Then she added, almost under her breath, "Unless it's the one they always talk about." I felt my chest tighten. The one who what? I asked. She didn't look at me this time. She just shook her head and stood up. Finish your coffee, she said. You're on playground duty in 5 minutes. She walked out before I could ask anything else. That night, when I was lying in bed, I kept thinking about the footprints again. Not because they were there, but because they weren't going anywhere. Just standing in front of the classroom, like whoever made them was still waiting outside the door. I wasn't supposed to be in the school that late. The parking lot was already empty, and the building lights were off except for the hallway near my classroom. I had forgotten my bag earlier that day, so I came back to get it before going home. When I walked inside, everything was quiet. In that way schools only get after dark. No kids, no voices, no doors opening. Just the sound of the air conditioner and my footsteps on the floor. As I got closer to my classroom, I noticed something strange. The light inside was on. I stopped in the hallway and just stood there for a second. I was sure I turned it off before leaving. We always check the lights before we go home, and the last teacher out locks the hallway. I thought maybe someone else came back for something. So I walked to the door and tried the handle. Locked. I frowned and looked through the small window in the door. The lights were on. The chairs were still stacked the way we left them. And for a second, I thought I saw something move near the back wall. I stepped back without meaning to. My first thought was that maybe a kid had gotten locked inside somehow, but that didn't make sense. We check every classroom before closing. I stood there for a few seconds, just staring at the window, waiting to see if something moved again. Nothing. Just the empty room. I told myself I was being stupid. I unlocked the door with my key and pushed it open slowly. The room looked completely normal. Lights on, tables in place. My bag sitting on the desk where I left it. No one inside. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I grabbed my bag and turned the lights off before leaving. When I stepped back into the hallway, I locked the door again and started walking toward the exit. That should have been the end of it. But the next morning, one of the kids said something that made my stomach drop. We were sitting at the table during snack time when one of the boys asked me, "Why were you here last night?" I froze for a second. "I forgot my bag," I said. "Why?" He kept eating like it wasn't a big deal. "You left the lights on," he said. I forced a small smile. "Yeah, I know. I came back to turn them off." He shook his head. "No, after that. I felt my chest tighten." "What do you mean?" He pointed toward the door. The lights were on again when he was in there. I stared at him. "Who?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the hallway the same way some of the kids had done before. Then he said quietly, "The boy who stays after everyone leaves." The other kids went quiet. Nobody laughed. Nobody said he was lying. They just kept looking at the door. I didn't ask any more questions after that. I told myself kids say weird things all the time. I told myself I was overthinking. But that afternoon, when I stayed late again to finish paperwork, I checked my classroom before leaving. Lights off, chairs stacked, door locked, everything normal. I walked down the hallway, turned the corner, and then stopped. Because behind me, the light inside my classroom turned on. I know it did. I didn't hear the switch. I didn't hear the door. But the light was shining through the window again. I stood there for a long time, just looking at it. I thought about going back. I thought about unlocking the door. I thought about checking the room one more time. But something about the way the light looked made me keep walking. And I haven't stayed late at the school since then. Not because I think the place is haunted. Not because I believe the kids. But because sometimes, during lunch, they still look at the hallway. Like they're waiting for someone to come back inside. At the preschool where I work, every classroom has a camera. They told me it was for safety, so parents in the office could check on the kids anytime. At first, it felt a little weird knowing someone could be watching, but after a few weeks, I stopped thinking about it. Nothing unusual ever showed up on those cameras. At least that's what I thought. One afternoon, the director asked me to come to the office after class. I thought maybe I forgot to sign something again, or one of the kids got in trouble. When I walked in, she was sitting at the desk with the computer turned toward her. She looked serious, but not angry. "Can you sit for a minute?" she said. I sat down across from her. She clicked the mouse a few times and opened the camera recording from my classroom. "This was from yesterday," she said. On the screen, I could see the room during nap time. The lights were off except for the small lamp in the corner. All the kids were lying on their mats, and I was sitting at the desk near the door. Everything looked normal. I watched for a few seconds, waiting for her to explain why she called me in. Then she paused the video. "Do you remember this?" she asked. I looked at the screen. "Yes, nap time," I said. Nothing happened. She didn't answer right away. She moved the video back a few seconds and played it again. This time I watched more carefully. The kids were sleeping. I was sitting at the desk, looking at my phone. Then one of the kids near the back of the room suddenly sat up. I frowned. I didn't remember that happening. The kid stayed sitting there for a few seconds, looking toward the corner of the room. Then slowly, he lay back down again. The director paused the video again. "Did you notice that when it happened?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I don't think so." She nodded slowly, like she expected that answer. Then she clicked forward in the video. A few minutes later, another kid sat up. Same corner, same direction, same slow movement. I felt a strange feeling in my chest. "Kids wake up sometimes," I said. "That's normal." She didn't disagree. She just let the video keep playing. About 10 seconds later, something else happened. The camera glitched for a moment. The screen flickered, like the signal cut for half a second. When the picture came back, I leaned closer without meaning to, because for that one frame, it looked like someone was standing near the wall. Not a kid, not me, too tall, just a shape near the corner where the kids had been looking. Then the video jumped again, and the room looked normal. I felt my arms get cold. "Did you see that?" I asked. The director didn't answer right away. She rewound the video and played the same part again. This time the glitch happened faster, almost impossible to notice, but I still saw it. Something there, right against the wall. She paused the video and looked at me. "Were you alone in the room?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Did anyone come in?" "No." She stared at the screen for a few seconds, then closed the video. "It's probably just the camera," she said. Her voice didn't sound convinced. I tried to laugh a little. "Yeah, probably." She nodded, but she didn't smile. "You can go back to class," she said. I stood up and walked to the door, but before I left, I turned back. "Why were you watching that recording?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she said, "Because one of the kids told his parents someone was standing in the room during nap time." I didn't say anything after that. I just went back to class. That afternoon, during nap time, I sat in the same chair as always. Same desk, same corner, same room. Everything felt normal, too normal. After a few minutes, I noticed one of the kids sitting up. He wasn't crying. He wasn't talking. He was just staring at the corner of the room, the same corner from the video. I felt my heart start beating faster. I didn't want to look, but I did anyway. There was nothing there. Just the wall. Just the shelf with the toys. Just the lamp. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself the camera glitch was nothing. I told myself kids imagine things. Then the boy looked at me. Not scared, not upset, just confused. And he whispered, "Why is he here again if you can't see him?" When you work with little kids, you get used to them saying strange things. They talk to toys like they're real. They make up friends that nobody else can see. They tell stories that don't make any sense. Most of the time, you don't think much about it. At least, I didn't. Until one of the kids in my class started talking about a teacher that didn't exist. Her name was Lily. She was 4 years old, quiet most of the time, but very observant. She didn't cry much, didn't fight with the other kids, and usually followed the rules better than anyone else. One morning during free play, I noticed she was sitting at the small table by herself, moving crayons around like she was sharing them with someone. I walked over and asked, "Who are you playing with?" She looked up at me like the answer was obvious. "With the other teacher," she said. I smiled a little. "What teacher?" She pointed toward the empty chair across from her. "That one." I looked at the chair. Nothing there. I thought maybe she meant one of the assistants, so I asked, which teacher? She frowned like I was the one being confusing. The one who comes when you leave. That made me pause for a second. What do you mean? I asked. She just shrugged and went back to coloring. She comes at night, she said. I didn't ask anything else after that. Kids say things like that all the time, and if you question them too much, they just make it weirder. But later that day, something else happened. During pickup time, Lily's mom was talking to me near the door while Lily stood next to her. Out of nowhere, Lily looked past me into the hallway and waved. Bye, she said. I turned around, thinking maybe another teacher was there. The hallway was empty. I looked back at her. Who are you saying bye to? I asked. She smiled. The other teacher. Her mom laughed a little. She talks about that all the time at home, she said. Says there's a teacher that stays after everyone leaves. I forced a small smile. Yeah, kids imagine things. Her mom nodded, but Lily, she's not pretend, she said quietly. Neither of us answered that. After they left, I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking down the hallway. Everything looked normal. Same lights, same doors, same silence. I told myself I was overthinking again. But a few days later, the director asked me to help clean one of the storage rooms near the back of the building. It was a small room we didn't use much, full of old supplies, broken toys, and boxes from years ago. While we were moving things, I found an old photo frame inside one of the cabinets. The picture inside looked really old. It showed a group of teachers standing in front of the school building. Different uniforms, different logo. Probably from a long time ago. I was about to put it back when something caught my eye. One of the women in the picture looked familiar. Not like I knew her, just familiar. Same hair, same height, same kind of clothes Lily always drew when she colored pictures of the other teacher. I held the photo closer. There used to be more staff here, right? I asked. The director looked at the picture for a second. Yeah, she said. That was before my time. I pointed at the woman. Do you know who this is? She leaned closer, then shook her head. No idea. That picture's older than me. I laughed a little and put the photo back in the box. Didn't think about it again. At least not until the next day. It was almost the end of the afternoon, and the kids were putting their backpacks on. Lily was the last one in the room. She stood near the door, looking into the hallway again. Same as before. I walked over to her. You ready to go home? I asked. She nodded, but didn't move. I followed her eyes. The hallway was empty. I felt that same cold feeling in my arms again. Without thinking, I asked, Is the other teacher there? She nodded slowly. Yes. I swallowed. What is she doing? Lily kept staring down the hall. Then she said something I still think about sometimes when I'm alone in that classroom. She's waiting for you to leave. I didn't ask anything else after that. I just turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked out with her. But when I got to the end of the hallway, I looked back one more time. I don't know why I did. Maybe I expected to see someone. Maybe I expected nothing. The hallway was empty. The classroom door was closed. Everything normal. Except for one thing. The light inside my room was on again. And I was sure I turned it off. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just a coincidence. Nap time at the preschool starts at 1:30 every afternoon. The lights are turned off, the kids lie down on their mats, and most of them fall asleep within a few minutes. Some kids wake up early sometimes. Some never sleep at all. That's normal. But one boy in my class started waking up at the exact same time every day. 2:17. I didn't realize it at first. The first time, I just happened to look at the clock when he sat up. 2:17 p.m. He didn't cry, didn't talk, didn't move. He just sat there on his mat, staring at the wall near the door. I thought maybe he had a bad dream. I walked over and whispered, "Hey, it's okay. Lie down." He slowly lay back down without saying anything. I didn't think about it again. Until the next day. Nap time again. Same routine. Same room. Same silence. I was sitting at the desk, filling out paperwork, when I heard the sound of the mat moving. I looked up. The same boy was sitting up again. Same position. Same direction. I glanced at the clock without really thinking. 2:17. I frowned a little. That felt strange, but I told myself it didn't mean anything. Kids can have habits. Kids can wake up at the same time. Still, something about the way he sat there made me uncomfortable. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't half asleep. He was staring at the door like he was waiting for something. I stood up and walked over to him. "You okay?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just kept staring. I followed his eyes to the door. Nothing there. I turned back to him. "You need to lie down," I said quietly. He slowly looked at me. Then he whispered, "He's late today." I felt my stomach drop a little. "What?" I asked. But he just lay back down and closed his eyes. He fell asleep again like nothing happened. That was the first time I started feeling that something wasn't right. After that, I started noticing the time every day during nap. 1:45, 2:05, 2:10, and then 2:17, every time. He would sit up, every single day. Same movement, same direction, same blank face. I never told the director about it. It sounded stupid even in my own head. Until one afternoon when the assistant teacher noticed it too. We were both sitting at the desk during nap time when the mat behind us moved. She looked back, then looked at the clock. "Why does he keep doing that at the same time?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I just watched him. He was sitting up again, staring at the door. The assistant leaned closer to me. "What time is it?" she asked. I looked at the clock. 2:17. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Then she stood up. "I'm going to tell him to lie down," she said. She walked toward him slowly, trying not to wake the other kids. When she got close, she stopped. I saw her shoulders stiffen a little. She stood there for a moment without moving. Then she turned around and walked back to the desk. Her face looked pale. "What?" I whispered. She sat down slowly. "He wasn't looking at the door," she said. I felt a cold feeling in my chest. "What do you mean?" she swallowed. "He was looking at the clock." I looked at the wall. The clock hung above the door where it always was. 2:17. Right when I looked at it, the second hand moved forward. Behind us, the mat made a sound again. We both turned at the same time. The boy was lying down, eyes closed, like nothing happened. We didn't talk about it after that. Not that day. Not the next day. But I started watching the clock every afternoon. Every single day. 2:10. Every single day he sits up. Except last Friday. Last Friday, he didn't move. 2:17 came. Nothing happened. He stayed asleep. I remember feeling relieved, like whatever weird pattern this was, it was finally over. Then the clock on the wall stopped, right at 2:17. The second hand didn't move. The room was completely silent. Even the air conditioner stopped. I stared at the clock for a long time, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. Behind me, I heard the sound of a mat moving, slow, soft. Not one mat, more than one. I turned around. 3 kids were sitting up, all of them staring at the door, and one of them whispered, "He's early today." The first time I saw the name, I thought the office made a mistake. It was Monday morning, and I was checking the attendance sheet before the kids came in. Every day we have to mark who's present, who's absent, and who gets picked up early. Nothing special, just routine. I was halfway down the list when I noticed a name I didn't recognize. Daniel Harper. I read it again. We only had 10 kids in the class, and I already knew all of them. I had been working there long enough to remember every name without looking, but this one didn't sound familiar at all. I thought maybe a new kid was starting. That happens sometimes without much notice. So I didn't think too much about it. When the kids arrived, I counted them like always. 1, 2, 3, 10. Same as usual. No extra kid. I looked back at the paper. Daniel Harper was still on the list. I asked the assistant teacher, "Are we getting a new student today?" She looked confused. "No, why?" I showed her the paper. She frowned. "That's weird," she said. She counted the kids too. 10. Same as always. We both just assumed the office printed the wrong sheet. It wouldn't be the first time. So I crossed the name out with a pen and forgot about it, at least for a few days. On Thursday, I got the attendance sheet again. Same list, same names, and Daniel Harper was back. This time I was sure I didn't imagine it. I checked the classroom. 10 kids. No Daniel. I walked to the office during break. "I think there's a mistake on my attendance sheet," I told the director. She took the paper and looked at it. "What mistake?" This name, I said, pointing. We don't have this kid in my class. She looked at the paper for a long time, longer than she needed to. Then she said, "That's strange." She clicked something on the computer. Her face changed a little. Not shocked, just uncomfortable. "He's in the system," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "He's assigned to your class." I felt my stomach tighten. "But he's not here." She looked at the screen again, then back at me. He was. I didn't understand what she meant. "When?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just scrolled down the screen slowly. Then she said, "He stopped coming last year." That didn't make sense. I hadn't even worked here last year. "So why is he still on my list?" I asked. She shook her head. "Probably a system error." She printed a new sheet and gave it to me. "No, Daniel," she said. "Should be fixed now." I went back to class and didn't think about it again. Until the next week. Monday morning. New attendance sheet. I didn't even mean to check first. But when I looked down at the paper, my hands stopped moving. Daniel Harper. Back again. Same spot on the list, same spelling, same everything. I felt that cold feeling in my arms again. This time, I didn't cross it out. I just left it there. During circle time, I started calling the names, one by one. The kids answered like always. Then I got to the name. I hesitated for a second. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself it was nothing. "Daniel?" The room stayed quiet. Of course it did. I almost moved on to the next name. Then one of the girls looked at the empty space next to her and said, "He's not here today." I froze. "What?" I asked. She pointed to the carpet. "He sits there," she said. None of the other kids laughed. None of them looked confused. A few of them turned and looked at the same empty spot, like it was normal, like someone was supposed to be there. I felt my chest start beating faster. I forced a smile. "There's nobody there," I said. The girl frowned. "Yes, there is," she said quietly. "He just doesn't come when you look." I didn't call his name again after that. I told myself kids copy each other. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself the list was wrong. That afternoon, when the kids went home, I stayed in the classroom a little longer to clean up. The room was empty, chairs stacked, lights on, same as always. I picked up the attendance sheet from the desk to throw it away. For a second, I just stared at it. All the names were there, all 10 kids. Normal. Then I noticed something at the bottom of the page. One more line, printed smaller than the rest. Daniel Harper, present. I stood there for a long time, just looking at the paper. I don't remember marking it. I don't remember anyone answering. I don't remember writing anything. But next to his name, there was a check mark, and I was the only one in the room. Kids draw pictures all the time in my class. Most of them draw the same things over and over. Their house, their parents, the sun in the corner, stick people holding hands. Sometimes they draw me too. Usually I'm just a circle with hair and a smile. Nothing strange about that. But there was one girl who kept drawing the same picture every day. And after a while, I started wishing she wouldn't. Her name was Ava. She liked to sit at the art table longer than the other kids, even after everyone else went to play. Every afternoon, she would take a paper, pick the same colors, and draw the same scene. At first, I didn't notice anything weird. It was just a classroom drawing, little tables, little chairs, kids sitting on the carpet, and me standing near the board. Normal. But after a few days, I realized something. In every drawing, there was another person behind me. Not a kid, too tall, always standing right behind where she drew me. The first time I noticed it, I thought maybe she was drawing another teacher. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing at the tall shape. She didn't look up from the paper. "That's the one who stays here," she said. I smiled a little. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "He's always there." I didn't ask anything else. Kids say things like that all the time, and if you question them too much, they just keep going. But the next day, she drew the same picture again. Same tables, same carpet, same me, same tall shape behind me. This time I looked closer. The shape didn't have a face, just a dark outline, long arms, standing too close. I felt uncomfortable looking at it. "Why is he behind me?" I asked. She finally looked up, because that's where he stands. Her voice sounded completely normal, like she was talking about a chair or a toy. I laughed a little, trying to make it feel less weird. Well, I don't see him. She stared at me for a second. Then she said something that made my skin feel cold. That's because he doesn't like when you turn around. After that, I stopped asking about the drawings, but she didn't stop making them. Every day. Same picture, same classroom, same tall shape behind me. One afternoon during free play, the director came in to talk to me about something. We were standing near the back of the room while the kids were coloring. Ava was at the table again, drawing. Same paper, same colors, same picture. The director picked one up and looked at it. She smiled at first. Then her smile faded a little. "Why does she always draw this?" she asked. I shrugged. "She likes drawing the class, I guess." She kept staring at the paper longer than I expected. Then she pointed at the tall shape. "Who's that supposed to be?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Ava spoke first. Without looking up, "That's him." The director looked at her. "Who?" Ava kept coloring. "The one behind her." The room felt quiet for a second. The director put the paper down slowly. She didn't laugh, didn't say anything. She just said, "Okay, let's put this back." After she left, I picked up the drawing again. For the first time, I noticed something different. In the picture, I was standing at the front of the room like always. The tall shape was behind me like always. But this time, the head of the shape was turned. Not toward the kids, not toward the door, toward the front. Toward the person holding the paper, toward me. I felt my chest tighten. "Ava," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "Why is he looking this way today?" She stopped coloring, slowly lifted her head, and looked past me. Not at me, past me, toward the back of the room. Her face went completely serious. Then she whispered, "He always looks like that." I didn't move. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. I just stood there holding the paper, staring at the drawing. After a few seconds, I forced myself to look behind me. Nothing. Just the shelf. Just the wall. Just the door to the storage room. Everything normal. When I looked back down at the paper again, my hands felt cold. Because the picture wasn't the same anymore. The tall shape wasn't behind me now. It was closer, right next to me. And the space behind the teacher in the drawing was empty. There's a small bathroom at the end of the hallway near my classroom. It's the one the younger kids use because it's closer than the main restroom. Nothing special about it. 2 small sinks, 2 tiny stalls, a light that hums a little when you turn it on. I had used it 100 times without thinking about it, until one of the kids refused to go inside. It happened during class one morning. A boy raised his hand and said he needed to use the bathroom. I told him to go like usual. He walked to the door, then stopped, just stood there, looking down the hallway. "Go ahead," I said. He shook his head. "I don't want to go in there." I thought maybe he was scared of being alone. "That's okay," I said. "I'll stand right here." He still didn't move. "There's someone in there," he said. I looked down the hall. The bathroom door was closed. Nobody had gone that way. "No, there isn't," I said. He kept staring. "Yes, there is." I walked down the hallway myself and opened the door. The bathroom was empty, lights off, stalls open, nothing inside. "See?" I said. He didn't look convinced, but he went in anyway while I waited outside. After that, I forgot about it. Kids say things like that all the time, but a few days later, another kid said the same thing. Different day, different time, same bathroom. This time it was a girl during recess. She ran back into the classroom and said she needed to use the restroom. I told her to go. She stopped in the doorway and looked down the hall. Then she whispered, "He's in there again." I felt a strange feeling in my chest when she said that. "Who?" I asked. She pointed. "The boy in the bathroom." I walked down the hall again, same as before. Door closed, no sound. I opened it, empty. I checked both stalls, nothing. I even looked behind the door, nobody. When I came back out, she was still standing in the same spot. I tried to laugh a little. "There's no one there." She frowned. "He goes away when you open the door." That was the first time it really started bothering me. After that, I noticed something else. Sometimes the bathroom light would already be on, even when nobody was inside. At first, I thought another teacher forgot to turn it off. But one afternoon, I turned the light off myself, closed the door, and walked back to my classroom. Less than a minute later, I looked down the hallway again, The light was on. The door was still closed. I didn't remember hearing it open. I told myself the switch was loose. I told myself I didn't turn it off all the way. I told myself it was nothing. Until last Friday. We were lining up to go outside, and one of the kids said he needed the bathroom. I walked with him this time. When we got to the end of the hall, the door was already open. The light was on. I was sure nobody had gone there. The boy stopped walking. He grabbed my hand. "He's still in there," he whispered. I felt my stomach tighten. "There's nobody there," I said, even though my voice didn't sound right. We stood there for a second. The bathroom was quiet. No sound. No movement. I slowly pushed the door open the rest of the way. Empty. Both stalls open. Sink dry. Nobody. The boy stayed behind me the whole time. He didn't let go of my hand until we walked back to class. That should have been the end of it. But later that day, after the kids went home, I stayed late to finish paperwork. The hallway was empty. The lights were dim. Everything quiet. When I walked past the end of the hall, I noticed the bathroom light was on again. The door was closed. I stopped walking. I don't know why. I just stood there looking at it for a long time. Finally, I walked over and pushed the door open. Empty. Same as always. I turned the light off myself, closed the door, and went back to my classroom. When I grabbed my bag and left a few minutes later, I checked the hallway one more time before going home. The bathroom door was still closed, but the light under the door was on again. I stood there staring at it, trying to decide if I wanted to open it one more time. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the floor in front of the door, there were small, wet footprints. Not going in, not going out, just standing there, like someone was inside the bathroom and never came back out. After working at the preschool for a few months, I started getting used to the strange things the kids said. At first, every little comment made me uncomfortable. Someone in the hallway, someone in the classroom, someone in the bathroom. After a while, I told myself it was just part of working with small children. Kids imagine things. Kids copy each other. Kids say things they don't understand. That's what I kept telling myself. And for a few weeks, nothing unusual happened. Everything felt normal again. Until one afternoon, when I stayed later than usual. Most of the teachers had already left, and the kids were all picked up. The building gets really quiet after that, quieter than you expect. You can hear every step in the hallway, every door closing, every sound from the air vents. I was in my classroom finishing paperwork when I heard the front door open. Not loud, just the sound of the handle and the click of the lock. I looked at the clock, almost 6:30. Nobody should have been coming in that late. I walked to the door and looked into the hallway, empty. I thought maybe the director came back for something. It happens sometimes, so I sat back down and kept working. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps, slow, not running, not fast, just walking, from the hallway, past my door. I stood up again and looked out. Nobody. The hallway lights were on, but there was no one there. I felt that same cold feeling I used to get when I first started working there. I told myself I was just tired. I grabbed my bag and decided to go home. As I turned the lights off in the classroom, I remembered something one of the kids said earlier that day. We were putting toys away when he asked me, "Do you stay here after everyone leaves?" I laughed a little. "Sometimes," I said. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. He just kept putting the blocks in the box. Then he said quietly, "You shouldn't." I thought he meant it was late. "Why not?" I asked. He shrugged, "Because someone else stays." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and ran to the carpet. At the time, I didn't think about it again. But standing in that empty hallway that evening, I remembered exactly how he said it. Not scared, not joking, just sure. I locked my classroom door and started walking toward the exit. The hallway lights flickered once, just for a second. Then they stayed on. When I got near the end of the hall, I noticed the small bathroom light was on again. I stopped walking. I knew I turned it off earlier. For a moment, I thought about checking it. Then I remembered all the times the kids said someone was in there. I kept walking. As I passed the office, I saw the computer screen was on, the camera monitor, Nobody was inside the office, but the cameras were still running. I don't know why I looked at it. I just did. All the classrooms were empty, hallway empty, playground empty. Then one of the screens changed. It showed my classroom. The lights were off, chairs stacked, everything normal. Except for one thing. There was someone standing near the back wall, too tall to be a kid, not moving, just standing there. I felt my chest tighten. I stepped closer to the screen. The camera flickered once. The shape was gone. The room empty again. I stood there for a long time, staring at the monitor, waiting for it to change again. It didn't. After a while, I told myself the camera glitched. Same as before. Same explanation. Same feeling. I turned off the office light and walked to the front door. Right before I left, I heard something behind me. Not loud, just a small sound. Like a classroom chair scraping the floor. I froze. The sound came from down the hallway, from my classroom. I didn't turn around, I don't know why. I just stood there holding the door. For a few seconds, I thought about going back to check, making sure everything was locked, making sure nobody was inside. But then I remembered what the kid said. Someone stays after everyone leaves. I opened the door and stepped outside. When the door closed behind me, I looked through the glass one last time. The hallway was empty. Lights on. Doors closed. Everything normal. Except the light inside my classroom was on again. And I know I turned it off. I stood there for a long time, just looking at that door, trying to decide if I wanted to go back inside. I never did. But sometimes, when I leave late now, I feel like I'm not the last person in the building, just the last one who's allowed to leave.